Hey folks, welcome back to another review with yours truly, Sam Healey. Today we're taking a look at Undaunted Normandy. Now this is put out by Osprey Games, designed by David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. And this is a deck building game where you are using the cards in your deck to order units that are on the board. So it is a strategic, tactical game with a lot of board play that's out there. But you're also building your cards from your supply, building your deck rather, with cards from your supply, and using those cards for different effects throughout the game. Let's get down to the table. I'll show you how it works and come back with some final thoughts in just a few moments. Now, we should say right off the bat that this is a scenario-driven game. So there is a scenario book for it, and inside the scenario book, there are a number of different scenarios here that will get you off and running here pretty quick with the different scenarios that they have set up here. Each scenario tells you basically what the win conditions for the scenario are, and since this is a deck builder, it's also going to have what your decks are going to start with, what your supplies are going to start with, and so forth. And it also gives you, of course, the setup of the actual board. In this scenario, the objective is to control 5 points of objectives within the game, and the first side to do that is automatically the winner. So as you can see here, the Germans are starting with 3 objective points with the game because they have their control marker here and they control those 3 points. The Americans don't have anything, so they're going to have to go out and scout and control 5 points of objectives before the Germans can get 2 more. Now, the scenario also states that the Americans begin this scenario with the initiative, and then 4 cards are drawn for your opening hand. The first thing that's done is a card is chosen by each side as their initiative card, and then they are flipped over. And then we look at the initiative value that's up here at the top corner of the card. Whoever has the highest gains the initiative for that round. So in this case, the Germans definitely got it. So this token will flip over and come over to their side, denoting that they will be going first. The cards that were played for initiative are now discarded, and then the Germans can take their first turn. As we're looking at the cards that are available to the Germans on their first turn, we're going to go ahead and go over the anatomy of a card. So basically, we already know about the initiative value up here. Then this tells you what squad this character is with. And then there is also 2 abilities down here at the bottom. There are sometimes more abilities, we'll get to that in just a few moments, that this person can carry out when you play this card out of your hand. So, bolster means that you'll be able to take X amount of cards from your supply row and add them to your discard pile, making them part of your deck. Or you can inspire X number of units that you have already played into your play area this turn and allow them to go again. Other abilities, for example, this scout down here, we talked about recon, where you can take a fog of war card out of your hand and then draw a replacement from your deck. Conceal actually takes a fog of war card from your opponent's supply and adds it to their discard pile, clogging up their deck. You can also scout, which is the scout's form of movement, which means that you can move 1 and 2, an X number of spaces, whatever that number is there. And then every spot that you move through, for example, let's say that he came through down here. You can place, as a scout B, you can place a scout marker there. If you do that, you have to add a fog of war card to your discard pile. Attacking means that you're going to be rolling 1 die. You can target any person on the board, but the amount of defense that they're going to get will increase the longer the range is. And we'll go over combat more later. So on the German's turn, we're going to go ahead and play the squad leader for his bolster ability, which allows him to add 2 cards from his company, which is B, into the discard pile. So we're going to go ahead and add a Rifleman B and a Scout B to the discard pile. Then we're also going to play a Squad Leader A, which allows him to do the same thing for that bolster. We'll add a Rifleman and a Scout from Squad A there. And then we also have a Scout here. And since we can, we're going to go ahead and have Scout B move 1 and 2. He already has a scout token here, so he doesn't need to place one there, but here he does. So we'll go ahead and place a scout token there, and that adds a Fog of War to his deck. And then that will be the end of his turn. These will go into his discard pile, and now it's the American's turn. Now on the American's turn, we're going to use our Scout B here to scout 2, but you can move up to 2. You don't have to ever move the full complement. So he's just going to move 1 and scout 1 here like this, and then that will add a Fog of War to his deck. With my other scout, however, I'm going to go ahead and use a Conceal, which will add a Fog of War card from my opponent's supply to his deck. And then on my third action here, I'm going to have my Rifleman B group fire at this scout over here, trying to keep him from scouting that area so that units can't move over there. So in combat, we look at the number that's next to the word attack in this black circle here, and there's a 1 there, which means he's going to be able to roll 1 die against this unit here. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can attack. It can just be a straight up attack where you are going to try to do damage to him. Or you can do suppressive fire, which means you just want to flip him over, and then suppressed units aren't able to take any actions. They would have to, their owner would have to spend one of their activation cards to basically flip them back over that way. There's also blast attacks, which mortars will be able to do later, which will affect all the units on one tile, and you roll dice separately for each of those units. In this particular case, we just want to kind of try to freeze this guy where he is so that he can't move over there and try to buy some time. So we're just going to try some suppressive fire. Now, the way this works is I have a 10-sided die that I'm going to be rolling, and the scout has a defense here. He has a base defense of 5. Then we look at the tile that he's on and the defense that's there, and we add that to it. In this case, it's a 0. But then you also take into account the range, 1, 2. So it's going to be 5 plus 0 plus a range of 2, which is 7, which means that I have to roll a 10-sided die and get a 7 or higher in order to suppress that scout. So we go ahead and do that, and that's a 5. So we failed to suppress the scout on this particular turn. We go ahead, having played all of our cards, we end that, and we go back into another round. At the beginning of the next round, a new hand of 4 cards is drawn by both sides, and then initiative cards are chosen again. And then those cards are revealed, and since the American played the higher initiative value than the German here with their 1 for the Fog of War, the token comes back over here, and the Americans are going to be going first in this round. The first thing the Americans are going to do is play their platoon sergeant, which will allow them to bolster 3, and since he doesn't have an A or a B denoting what group he's with, it can be from any one of my decks over here, except for, of course, the Fog of War card. Or I can command 2. Command 2 just simply means that you draw 2 cards. So I'm going to draw 1 card up into my hand, then I don't have a draw pile, so I have to shuffle my discards and draw 1 more. And having shuffled that discard pile, I'll draw 1 more card to complete that command action, and that is finished. My next action is going to be to have my rifleman from Squad A try to suppress that scout again. So again, we have 5, 5, 6, 7. So I got to roll a 7 or higher, and I didn't do that again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to play the squad leader from Squad A, and he can either bolster, so he can pull a couple of cards from here, or he can inspire, and he's going to inspire this rifleman group here to try again. So again, we're trying to get a 7, and we did. That's a 10, and so now this scout is suppressed like that, and that's a good job by my Squad A rifleman. I have a squad leader here for Squad B as well. He doesn't have any Squad B units to inspire, so he's going to go ahead and bolster. So we're going to go ahead and take 1, 2 rifleman cards and add that to my discard pile. And then my last card is Fog of War, which doesn't do anything. My turn's over. Now, the German player this turn had a pretty bad draw with drawing 2 Fog of War cards out of the 4 cards he has available to him. So he's going to try to remedy a little bit of that pain by playing his platoon sergeant and drawing 2 cards. So 1, then he has to shuffle and draw again. And then he draws his second. And wow, that was not good. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're going to have, first of all, Rifleman B. He's going to follow suit here and try to get over here. And then Rifleman A is going to return fire at this scout right here. But this time, we're going to try to do some damage, so we're actually going to attack him, which doesn't change any of the rolls that he has to make, but it will possibly make me lose some cards out of my deck. So Rifleman A is 2 spaces away, plus his 5 base defense, that's 7, plus this tile gives another defense of 1, so it's an 8 or higher that I need to roll for doing damage. And he rolls a 5, so no damage was done. That was an unsuccessful attack. And then the final 2 cards in his hand were Fog of War cards that Platoon Leader didn't do a whole lot of good. So now his turn is over. And that's generally speaking how you play Undaunted Normandy. Now, there are some things that I didn't go over. There are mortars and snipers and machine gunners units that have higher and different kinds of attacks and that kind of thing. But generally speaking, you're using your cards in your deck, you're building your deck from your supply, you're using your cards to manipulate the different units that are on your board, all going for the scenario-specific objective that's there. And whoever is able to reach that scenario-specific objective first is the winner. So that's about that for Undaunted Normandy. Now, I have to say that I am not a huge fan of deck builders. I think there's sometimes it feels like there's a little bit more luck involved in them than with dice rolling. And I know that seems kind of strange, but that's just the way it feels sometimes to me, because what you're able to do is really restricted by what cards come up into your hand. Now, there are ways for you to mitigate that with the command ability from some of your platoon leaders and that type of thing, where you can draw more cards. So I get it, and there's ways for you to mitigate those Fog of War cards to keep them out of your deck, or to get them out of your deck, and to add more of them into your opponent's deck, and all of that kind of stuff. I understand that there's ways to mitigate all of that, but sometimes it just feels like, I think I lost because I didn't get the cards I needed when I needed them. So there's that. So just take that with a grain of salt, I guess you could say, because I enjoy deck builders, don't get me wrong. But sometimes they feel more luck-driven than like dice rolling. But with all that having been said, my first pro here is the production quality of the game itself. The components are all very nice components. They're not flashy and they're not glitzy or anything like that, but they're all very well produced, and they're durable, they're sturdy, whatever word you want to put in there. They're very good components. All of the tokens are nice and thick, what you probably would expect as the norm in well-produced games. The cards also have, again, while they're not the best that I've seen, they're also good. They're decent. They're going to hold up to wear and tear. I would imagine you're probably going to want to sleeve the cards as well. Anyway, I usually don't, because I don't play deck building games often enough to warrant sleeving my cards. But if you enjoy them more, you're going to be playing it more, so you may want to think about doing that. The artwork is my second pro. I do like the artwork and the graphic design of all of the cards. Now, some of the cards look a little sterile, I guess you could say, because they have a very stark white background with artwork that is placed on it with all of the other design properties that are in the card, but I like the way it looks. It gives it a clean look to me, and it's not cluttered, I guess you could say. It's just very easy to read what all of the different abilities are. There's really not any iconography. It's just text, so there isn't that barrier to jump through as well, having to remember what this icon does. No, it's just a word. Now you do have to remember what the word does and what it means, but it's rather intuitive as you go through the game. It is not difficult at all. I would say through maybe 1 or 2 scenarios, you're going to have everything pretty much ironed out as far as remembering what all of the different abilities of your units do as in actual gameplay. I also like the neat little added thing of putting a name on each of the different soldiers that are used in the game. I think that was cool. Now, they used some of the Americans were actual playtesters' names that were used, but all of the other names that are there are just ones that were generated by names that were popular or widespread in that era back in World War II. So I like the fact that they do that. Now, they're not actual soldiers' names or anything like that, so that's not what they did. They just randomly, I guess you could say, generated these names that were common for that era, and I like that. It gives it a feel of this is not just some arbitrary piece on a chessboard somewhere. No, this is an actual soldier that you're commanding, that you're sending into battle. I like that it does that. Kind of piggybacking on the idea of naming all of the soldiers is my next pro, and that is how each scenario is based upon actual events. These aren't just made up things that are going on. They're all based on historical battles and skirmishes that happened during World War II. Something that I really enjoy, that Memoir 44 does a lot of, and many other games do it too, but it really kind of shines, and I like that they do that because it's not just a game. There is an educational level that is induced into the game at that point, where you're bringing to light, you're putting into the forefront rather, that these were real events. These were real things that happened. It's not just some figment of somebody's imagination. So I like it when games, especially historically based games, do that, bringing to light the reality of what's there. As far as gameplay is concerned, I was pleased because it is what you would probably expect for most deck builders. However, there's a caveat there that you're not spending currency or anything like that. You're using the abilities of your different leaders and so forth to build your deck, and then you're also able to affect your opponent's deck as well, which is another layer of interaction. You're not just interacting on the board with your unit, you're also interacting with your opponent's deck. Doing damage to a unit actually removes cards from their deck. You can add Fog of War cards to their deck by doing conceal actions with your scouts. So I like that level of interaction, and it makes it feel just a little bit different, a little bit fresh. And so I thought that was a really cool way of adding more interaction to a genre that sometimes, not always, but sometimes has little player interaction. It's more about building your own deck and making its engine work well, more than it is sometimes with than having an effect in another player's deck, or affecting their deck through what's going on the board. I like it when deck building games add that layer of player interaction there that sometimes is lacking. Now, my only real con of the game is that it really does seem like some of the scenarios are very heavily weighted in one way or another. In other words, it's a little bit easier for one side to win than it is for the other one. And I don't really have necessarily a problem with that, because Memoir 44 is the same. A lot of these reenactment type, wargamey type stuff are weighted that way because that's the way history was. We have the, I guess you could say, the benefit of hindsight, where we can see what happened. So we're going to set up the scenario to kind of mimic what happened, but in that vein, there is some leeway, I guess you could say, that has to be taken in order to make it gamey and not just a reenactment. So it's not I don't mean to say that I think that it's impossible for one side or the other to win in whatever scenario it's weighted the other way, but it's difficult. So I don't know how many people are really going to like that. I think most people, or many people at least, are going to want to come to the table with an equal chance of winning. Some people, I have met them, and I feel this way sometimes. I like the challenge of, I know I'm kind of behind the eight ball here, so I've got to really fight forward and do the best I can to try to pull out that win. So again, I understand this is a light con, but I think it should be a con, because it's whenever you deal with I don't want to say imbalance, because I don't think that's really the correct word. But when you deal with ones that might be weighted in one way or the other, it might pull in that negative feeling. Well, I didn't really have a chance to win because it's weighted in the other person's direction. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think it's a huge idea. I don't think it's a huge problem. I think this is a great game, don't get me wrong. But some people might get rubbed the wrong way for it. So with all that having been said, I'm going to give Undaunted Normandy a strong 8 out of 10 because I really do enjoy the deck building aspect of it, as well as, kind of coupled with the tactical strategic of moving your pieces around the board and doing things with them that way. I really like that marriage, that coupling, because it seems like it wouldn't be a good match, but it really turned out to be a good match in this particular case. So I'm going to give Undaunted Normandy a strong 8 out of 10. I'll say this, do not underestimate your Fog of War cards, because they can really mess you up, and they can really mess up your opponent too. So any chance you have to put Fog of War cards into your opponent's deck and get them out of your deck, take heed, wary travelers. But anyway, 8 out of 10 for Undaunted Normandy. Thanks for joining me. I certainly appreciate it. We'll see you guys and gals on the flip side. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.